Well, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome in from across the continent and beyond for another very exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. If you're joining us for the first time, and some of you are today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And if you're an oldie but goodie that's been here a million times before, then welcome back. So nice to have you for my favorite series that we have in all of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants history. Do not tell the other series, they'd be really offended, but I've got to say, this is just the best thing that we do, and I love it so much. So this is part of our Wild Hope series. Wild Hope is an incredible series put together by the HHMI Tangled Bank Studios crew, and what they do is feature the coolest, most tangible conservation success stories in the world. I really encourage you, check out Wild Hope TV, check out Wild Hope as a playlist on YouTube. There's all sorts of incredible videos, including the very unwieldy URL for this one that I'm going to share with all our classes at the end of the broadcast. But today we are going back in with Wild Hope live with Dr. Jenni. She's joining us from the Maui Nui Seabird recovery team in Hawaii. And I've got to tell you, every time we have folks in Hawaii, and this is true for Jenni as well, and we did the test before this program, there's always bird song. I don't know what's going on in Hawaii, but it's like the most magical place ever where you always hear the most lovely birds. It makes you want to hop on a plane every time I get to feature someone from there. So you're in good hands today, folks. I'm so excited to have you in. And without further ado, welcome to the broadcast. Jenni, so nice to meet you and have you on today.
Hello, good morning, and good afternoon, and wherever you may be. And thanks, Jesse. It is indeed always magical here in Hawaii, so you're correct about that.
We're going to have to come. So once we learn all about your Seabird recovery stuff, we're going to be on the first plane after we're done. And it's a lot warmer where you are than where I am in Newfoundland too. So I can't hardly wait. Yeah. So to begin, as I said, this is part of our Wild Hope series. So what I'd love to do is play this little 1.5-minute clip of some of the amazing stuff that you do, inspire our classrooms to go and explore that. And then we'll dive in with your presentation. Does that sound good?
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, let's bring that up and play this for you all to get a little sense of what her work is all about. Here we go.
This was historically always a nesting site for the uaukani. And through human development, it turned into a resort center with condos and other development. And the uaukani were not present there for many years.
All of these birds evolved over their entire millennia of life without having predators to deal with.
There was a local fisherman that had noticed carcasses of the uaukani turning up when he would go out to fish. So he contacted the State Department and they implemented a predator control program. We bait these live traps and we check them every day. And then when the free-ranging cat or the mongoose gets captured in the trap, we remove it from the colony. When we come back year after year, we see burrows just right on top of one another. You get more and more burrows every year.
Oh, it's so cool. It's like all the themes that we cover in all our conservation programs sort of encapsulated in one awesome project. Human-animal conflict, invasive species, community support for co-conservation. It must be so, with professional detachment aside, it must be so rewarding to get to see this sort of thing happen where it's just, lucky you.
Yeah, it is every day. You know, I'm very blessed. So yes.
Well, I'm going to zip it because the star of the show is you, and I'm really excited for you to dive in with your presentation and share a little bit about some of those nitty-gritty on-the-ground details. So if you want to bring that up, we can dive in and take us away.
Yes, I hope to cover all of those great points you just mentioned. So, okay. Let me get started. Oops, we start from the beginning. How about that?
Spoilers, kids.
How about that?
Nice.
Okay,
You are good to go. Couldn't be better.
All right. So, okay, yeah, thank you so much. And as Jesse mentioned, my name is Jenni, and I am an ecologist and a conservation scientist. And for the past 9 years, I have been working with the Maui Nui Seabird Recovery Project. Our mission is to locate, protect, and enhance seabird populations and their habitats in Hawaii. And just starting off here, you already got a teaser of the seabirds, but here are a couple seabirds, and then also a little picture of what it might look like when we're out on the job. So to start, I was going to give a quick seabird biology lesson and teach you some characteristics you can use to identify seabirds. So the most important thing is that seabirds come to land only to breed and raise their chicks. So unlike maybe seagulls or shorebirds, which are often found, nearby the ocean, seabirds are usually not just hanging around on the land, and they're never feeding there. They spend most of their time out over the ocean, on the water, and in the water, and they can even sleep while they're flying. Seabirds are also philopatric. So this word, if you look at it, philopatric, it literally means loving your home country. Okay, and this means that they always return to the same place. So even if they are thousands of miles away out at sea, they find their way home back to their nest and to their mate every year. Seabirds have a very long lifespan, so they can live a really long time. Wisdom is a very famous seabird. She is a moli, or a Laysan albatross. And because of the research being done on this species, we know that she is at least 70 years old, and she is still having a chick every year. So she just had her newest chick recently this year. Most seabird, this next part of this that says they have low reproductive output, this means that like wisdom, most seabirds only have one chick a year. So this is kind of different from other birds you might know that say like songbirds or like chickens that have a single nest with a lot of eggs and a lot of chicks, but they may not live as long. And finally, seabirds are top predators in all of the world's oceans, and they are an important part of marine food webs. So this is a video just to show you a little example of how excellent fishers that seabirds can be. These are gannets feeding on the school of fish. Some seabirds can dive over 100 feet or 30 meters, and some can even catch flying fish in the air as the fish are leaping out of the water. So pretty amazing. Okay, seabirds also have some distinctive morphological characteristics or things you can see with your eyes. And this moli, this is a Laysan albatross, a moli, just like Wisdom that I mentioned, and she is going to model for us. The first thing you might notice is those big floppy feet. So all seabirds have webbed feet. It's very important for being in and on the water. And then many seabirds also have this distinctive coloration pattern. So you can see the dark feathers on the backside and then the lighter feathers on the stomach. And this helps them camouflage at sea. Seabirds also have very long wings. This helps them soar for those long periods of time and long distances as they're flying. And they have strong, very sharp bills for catching fish and their other slippery swimming prey. Another interesting thing about seabirds is that they are usually sexually monomorphic. This means that you can't really tell the difference between males and females just by looking at them. And so this is kind of different also from other birds, like songbirds, where some males will have bright colors and fancy feathers and things like that. Okay, so there are 25 different species of seabirds that call Hawaii home. And they're all most of them are up here on this slide. Species are all rated in taxonomic groups where they share certain distinguishing traits. For example, you may notice the very long tail streamers on the two white birds kind of in the middle of the screen there. And those are tropic birds, and that's just one of the characteristics that set them apart. So other types of seabirds are albatrosses, petrels, shearwaters, terns, and boobies. And even with this species diversity, though, you may notice some of the characteristics that they all share that we just talked about. So maybe you notice that they all have pretty sharp, pointy bills, some with little curved tips, so to even help them catch the fish better. Or maybe you notice their long wings. So all of these species of seabirds have very special relationships with the islands of Hawaii. So the Hawaiian archipelago, which is another word for a chain of islands, is one of the most remote places in the world. So it is 2,400 miles even from the continent of North America. So I'm going to zoom in here. And you may be familiar with the southeastern Hawaiian Islands. Those are the islands of Hawaii, Maui Nui, which is actually a group of 4 islands, and the dot shows where I am in Maui, Oahu, and Kauai. But also part of Hawaii are many smaller islands and coral atolls located in the northwest. And these are the islands of Papahanaumokuakea. So this is a Hawaiian word that means the earth mother and the father sort of giving birth to the land. And I know it's a fun word, so if anybody wants to try it with me, we can do it again. It's Papahanaumokuakea.
I think
So just one for you to practice. Good. So all these islands are undeveloped by humans, and this is where most of the seabirds in Hawaii live now. And if you haven't had this geology lesson yet, the Hawaiian archipelago was formed as the Earth's crust, so this floating plate in the Earth's crust moves over a volcanic hotspot. So this little animation kind of shows that as that plate moves, the volcanoes rise up out of the water, form the islands, but then the plate continues to move and pulls the islands along. So this means that the farther away you get from the hotspot, which is now where Hawaii Island is, the older the islands are, right? So Maui, where I am now, is about 1 million years old. But some of the islands off to the northwest are 35 million years old. So seabirds have lived on these islands throughout their entire history. And we know this because of the fossil record, and the fossils show that seabirds were around during this very tragic day for the dinosaurs when there was the extinction at the KT boundary. So seabirds actually were around and survived this extinction event. So ancestors of the seabirds that we have today would have looked much like and behaved much like the modern examples. So this picture is of an extinct ancient marine bird sort of swimming around fishing in the same way. Over time, seabirds evolved to take advantage of all of the ecosystems that also evolved on the islands. So out in Papahanaumokuakea, they're very low because they're old, right? It's just a kind of very low islands and atolls, and you can see they're just covered with seabirds, and even seabirds burrowing under the ground. On the larger islands, we have burrowing seabirds that live near the seashore. We also have in the coastal communities, we have boobies like this red-footed booby, and they tend to nest in vegetation or in treetops. In the mountains, in the wet forested mountains, there are also seabirds. They dig burrows deep in the jungle. And this one, you can see these are conservation scientists in Kauai, and they're monitoring this population. And you can see this little chick there just snuggling up in his forest burrow. And then the seabirds also will build burrows high on the tops of the very tallest mountains in the island chain. So now seabirds on the islands have to overcome many new challenges. So this picture here is kind of like the ideal native forest habitat in Hawaii. And before humans arrived to these islands, seabirds would have been everywhere. But unfortunately, they are vulnerable to a lot of our actions and restricted to some of these more remote and protected areas. So some of the more serious threats they face are development. Buildings and roads take up a lot of the space where they used to live, and light pollution is one thing that we've learned is very harmful to seabirds. It really distracts them at night. So when they leave their nests at night, they usually navigate by the moonlight and the starlight, so the light is a problem. Introduced mammals, like the video clip said, is especially devastating. So seabirds evolved out here on these islands without any mammals present. So if you remember that map, Hawaii is 2,400 miles away from land. There's really no way for mammals to get here naturally besides humans. So humans brought cats and mongooses. Cats are really good predators, and they're good at adapting to any environment, even the very tops of the highest volcanoes. So it's best if they stay inside as house cats where they're safe, and also keeping native species safe. Plastic pollution is also a threat that we are beginning to learn a lot more about. This picture shows a Maui chick, and it's full of plastic. So seabirds will ingest the plastic while they're feeding, maybe sometimes intentionally, but often unintentionally, and then it stays in their stomachs, and then they'll end up feeding it to their chicks. So this is something that's becoming more and more of a problem every year. But across Hawaii, many conservation groups are working to save seabirds from these threats. So this is a map of Maui Nui, those 4 islands of Maui, and all of these little bubbles with seabirds in them are the different places where we work and the different species that we work with at the Maui Nui Seabird Recovery Project. So they live all over the islands, but I'm going to go into a couple different examples. On the summit of the Haleakala volcano in East Maui at 10,000 feet, we monitor and protect the endangered uau, or Hawaiian petrel. So just a fun fact, a lot of seabirds in Hawaii are named after the sound they make. So uau kind of make this uau sound, which look it up, it's very kind of ghostly. But so the uau were once the most numerous seabird species on the island, but now they're more restricted to these really high elevation areas. So we monitor them with game cameras. That's how we got this footage. We set up the game cameras at their burrows to see what they're up to. And this is one just kind of climbing out of its nest for the day. But we also do real simple monitoring. Sometimes you can see in the picture of the burrow down there, the toothpicks in the doorway. So we set up the toothpicks and we come back in a couple weeks, and they'll take the toothpicks for their nest, or they'll knock them down, and then we know they've been busy in there for the year. So the uau, not only are they endangered, but they are endemic to Hawaii. So this means they are found here and nowhere else in the world. So it's protecting them is very important, because this is, if they're no longer in Hawaii, then they're no longer anywhere. So the work of conservationists has definitely helped the uau. This video shows a rescued uau that was actually distracted by lights. And we were able to find it before it got hit by a car or anything like that. And we just take its measurements, make sure it's okay, and then release it out to sea. So hopefully it'll return in about 5 or 6 years when it's mature and ready to find its own mate. And where we work on Haleakala, the number of uau burrows that we monitor has increased from 8 to 120 in just 10 years. So good signs for the uau. The a'o are another species of seabird that are endemic to Hawaii, and they are very rare on Maui compared to their historical populations. They live in the more forested habitats on the mountains. We protect and monitor a'o at the Makamaka'ole Seabird Protection Site on Mauna Kahalawai in the West Maui Mountains. So this little video was of a adult that was taking care of its brand new chick in this special nest box. So if you look at the picture on here, you can maybe see this fence that is surrounding the site. This is a predator-proof fence, and it's a very important tool that we use to protect seabirds. And we use it in our seabird restoration. So restoration methods for seabirds are used all over the world. Here's a more close-up look of what it looks like at Makamakuʻole. So you can see that fence in the background. So the mesh on this fence is small enough even to keep out mice. So it keeps out rodents, cats, and mongooses, deer, pigs, everything. And then there's a little hood at the top so that the cats cannot climb in. So also in these protected areas, we set up nest boxes like the one you just saw with the chicken, the adult inside. That makes it easy for them to just move in and set up their nest. And we also broadcast their calls at night, and we set up the decoys so that they are kind of cued in that this is a good spot to go and that maybe they won't be alone here. Okay. And down on the seashore, we protect the uwa'ukani, or the wedge-tailed shearwaters. That's what you saw in the video in the beginning. They are present in many different coastal colonies across Hawaii. This picture is of a place called Mo'omomi on the island of Molokai. And it's a very special place where conservation scientists have restored this beautiful native coastal strand habitat. So you can see the dunes and the grasses and the very low vegetation. So here at Mo'omomi, and just like in Hawaiʻi in that video, the numbers of uwa'ukani have really increased exponentially since hard work began in these areas 20 years ago. And this is just one of those, a new chick from the Hawaiʻi colony, actually. So thanks to their long lifespans and their philopatry, so again, this is that they return to the same place from which they fledged, the seabirds are able to generate really good long-term data sets. So scientists can use these long-term data sets to really assess the impact of the work that's being done. So with birds, one common way to do that is through banding. So in this video, I was putting a band on the leg of that uwa'ukani chick. The chick is about 2 to 3 weeks from fledging, and you can see in the picture where the band goes right above the foot. So each band has a unique number, and that allows us to track the bird over its entire life. So the bands are small and they don't hurt the bird in any way if they're put on carefully. The banding program for the uwa'ukani has been ongoing in Maui since 1999. And every year we add over 3,000 new records to the database. So we have a lot of data in order to answer a lot of important questions. We can see how the health of the populations are doing. We can see how the birds are surviving. And we can also see how the different locations are responding to different conservation activities like predator control or habitat restoration. So for example, we have found that by planting native plants, we see an increasing number of birds that return every year. So this map shows the main locations where we do the banding every year. And using data, by comparing data from among these sites, we can also see if and how the birds will move around. And this is important because if something happens in one of these locations, we can be assured that the birds will be able to rebuild somewhere else. So we see this at a place called Molokini. So Molokini, it's in the foreground here, is a very small islet, and it's right off the coast of Maui. So that's Maui, the mountain in the background. And so the islets, like Molokini, are actually free from predators, and they are just filled to the brim with birds. So when they return to build their own nest, they may not have room. So we see that they will go and actually set up colonies or set up burrows in colonies on Maui. So Molokini and other islets are very important sources for the population of uwa'ukani, and this keeps the whole population very strong and resilient. So conservation work with the uwa'ukani is also very important because it is a way for the community to get involved. Unlike some seabirds, uwa'ukani are not shy, and they are happy to dig their burrows in urban areas like parks and yards. So this makes it easy for volunteers and school groups to help us with habitat restoration and banding. And it's a fun way for them to learn about the native species in Hawaii and to be connected with the special places around their homes. And before working with us, some students had no idea that they were sharing their local beach park with seabirds, like right underfoot. So creating awareness about seabirds is so important, and it's one of the most rewarding things I find with this job. Um, there are a lot of concerns. We have a lot of climate change induced sea level rise, which is becoming more and more pressing. And for seabirds in particular that live at sea level, this can be very scary. So again, this is that picture of the birds at Papahanaumokuakea, and you can see they're right there at sea level. So, and we do know that with rising sea levels and big storms, entire islands can be covered and inundated with water. So these seabirds have to find other places to live and raise their chicks when this happens. So that's why we work really hard to set aside the land for the seabirds, to restore the plants and the animals that belong there, and to protect them from predators. Then we can call out to them and let them know that it's a safe place to live. And then hopefully they can continue to live in Hawaii for another 65 million years. So that is all I have. So stop sharing.
Fantastic. Well, Jenni, thank you so much. What incredible stuff you guys are up to. And I just honestly, I wish if you ever need someone to like get you coffee in the field or shine shoes, you just call me up and I'll head over there from Newfoundland.
I need people to grab birds out of burrows. Can you do that?
I can do that. I can grab a bird with the best of them. I think maybe I might get pecked a few times, but it's worth it. Audience on YouTube, please keep those questions coming. We'd love to hear more from you. There's some really easy ones off the bat, though, Jenni. So, or really hard. We'll see what you feel with this question. Is there a favorite part of your job? You get to do so many diverse things. Is there something that really gets you up in the morning where you're like, yes, I get to do this specific thing? Anything you could share?
Yeah, it's kind of, I think about this all the time because there are so many things, but I feel lucky that I get to be outside every day in this wonderful place and get to see all these really special environments and ecosystems. But honestly, I think, taking everything into consideration over time, it's like how I mentioned that, we work with these student groups and they have no idea that there are all these seabirds just right there, and just seeing people find that connection with the special animals and plants that make up their home, that's, I think, and then they go and tell all their friends, and then we really have this strong respect and appreciation for the species here. So that's always really exciting. Also, just to see their faces, when they get pecked by the bird for the first time.
I would say so. It certainly sounds like one of the most fulfilling things you can do in conservation. So very, very cool. All right, Caesar in Nicaragua wants to know, what do you do when a bird gets in trouble? So you come across an individual bird, they're in danger. Is there any hospital for them? What's the deal?
Yeah, so seabirds, so I mentioned the light distraction, right? It's a special thing it has a special term called fallout, and it happens actually in many places all over the globe. And so when the seabirds are distracted by the light, they often will just get tired because they kind of circle around and around, or they'll run into a building or something and they'll land on the ground. And unlike other birds, which can just kind of pop up into the air and fly very real easily, seabirds kind of need a little bit more. They either need a breeze or wind to help them get the lift, or they kind of need a space to run off and fly out towards the ocean. So if they don't have that, they kind of just hunker down, right? So they're actually not that difficult to collect. If we do find them and they need help, we can just reach down and you kind of wrap them in a towel just so they don't freak out too much, and then put them in a box. And then normally, probably about 90% of the time, they are perfectly fine. They're just confused. They need to be pointed at the ocean and helped along their way. We do ban them so we can track them and make sure they, eventually return okay. But if in some cases, if they are hurt, there is a rehabilitation center, and we'll send the bird there. And they have all the correct facilities. They have little pools where they can float the birds, and until they're ready to be on the water, and they'll feed them their correct. They put fish and squid in a blender and feed it to the birds. And so we don't do that. We're in our location, but we do have partners that do that here in Hawaii.
Very, very cool. We've seen it sounds really easy to take care of animals in that way, but it's a lot of legwork. It's usually a lot of funding. So it is a big challenge. So I like when we get questions like that. And when some things are unfeasible, some things are very feasible. So way to go, Cedar. That's where your head's at. All right. So many questions. Miss Riddle's group, they're in Nova Scotia. They want to know, what's the largest seabird in Hawaii? Do we have like a top contender?
Yeah, so the Moli, or the Laysan albatross, is probably the one that was walking around modeling for us. That's probably the largest. Like, a lot of seabirds, even if they say their mass is low or they have small bodies, still have really long wingspans, right? So some of them can be sort of competitive with each other if that's the measurement we're looking at. But the albatrosses are the largest of the types of seabirds that we have here in Hawaii.
The albatrosses in general are one of my favorite birds of all time. Some of you might know them from poetry and myth and legend, but they're like some of the largest birds on planet Earth. They're incredible. They've got really cool rituals when they meet each other up after they miss each other for a while as a couple. Albatrosses rock. So cool question, guys. All right, we're getting into a lot of superlatives now that are really tricky. Alexis wants to know, how many seabirds are there in Maui Nui? Like, do we have an exact figure? Have you counted them all?
No, not in Maui Nui, but there are, like, so the wa'u, the endangered Hawaiian petrel that is on the summit of Hawaii, they like I said, they used to be the most numerous species, but now we say perhaps there's about 5,000 pairs remaining here in Maui Nui. Maybe there's hard to estimate because their burrows are hard to find, and then when they're at sea feeding, they're kind of like spread everywhere. So some people say about 5,000, some people say maybe as many as 10,000 pairs. So, it's really hard to get to the idea of it. But in the whole Hawaiian archipelago, including Papahanaumokuakea, it is the largest tropical seabird rookery in the world. So millions
Wow.
of seabirds in all of Hawaii.
I hope for our audience, you get a chance in your life to see an island that's just covered in seabirds. We have them in Newfoundland too, where it's like 200,000 puffins, and it's really one of the great natural spectacles in the world. So I really encourage you, get to a coast somewhere, go check it out, go on a kayak, go on a boat tour. It really does change your perspective of nature on this planet. So very cool question. Thanks, Alexis. All right, Miss Connor's class, they want to know, how many types of seabirds have you tagged? So you highlighted some of the incredible diversity of species there. Is there a limit to how many you've actually tagged? What's the deal?
We do, for the data collection program, the capture mark recapture is only for the uaukani because they are in these coastal areas, very easy to access. Every year they return. They're really resilient. Like I said, they're not shy. They set up home wherever they can. So they make it really easy for us to build this data set and answer these important questions. For the other species, anytime we collect any kind of fallout bird, or if, that's when we tag them. So the Hawaiian petrels and the Newell shearwaters, for example, we really only get to ban them if it's opportunistic sampling. So, but the Uaukani is the main source of our banding data.
Okay, great answer. Thanks, Jenny. You're going into so much depth in all these. I love it. Okay, how long have you worked with birds, and how did you come to work with birds? Is there a particular precipitating factor that led you to this amazing role that you have?
Actually, so this is one of my favorite questions because I've always I knew when I was going through my education that I just wanted to be a ecologist. I just wanted to be a biologist, right? So I've done all kinds of different work. So I worked with crustaceans, like in their little tiny seaside crustaceans. I've worked with soil, which was very different than birds. It has no personality, so but it was still fun. I learned a lot about working in a lab. So I did all these different things. I worked with some shorebirds before I came to seabirds, but I wanted to do this job because of the conservation impact, just being able to work with this conservation community in the islands. But I learned very quickly a lot about seabirds, and I had really great mentors in the field. And so now I would definitely consider myself a seabird biologist.
This is a pretty common story. I think a lot of people assume that someone in your role has like been seabirds solely your entire life. And quite often biologists will end up with a lot of different kinds of species and then settle on one that's really, strikes their fancy or gets them up in the morning. So I love this query, and you can take this to the bank. Pretty much everyone we ever bring on for Wild Hope or any other conservation series will have a similar story to that. So lucky you for getting to play your hand in a few different bits of wildlife.
Yeah.
Let's see. Neat question, technical. So for someone who's never seen a seabird eat, how does a seabird eat when they're out at sea? So you got something like a gannet that dives in and grabs a fish. Is it eating it in the water? Is it flying with it and eating it? Is it eating it on the surface? What's the deal?
Yeah, so that's probably species dependent, right? So yeah, if they're diving, they'll pop up and then they just swallow the fish whole, right? They don't have to chew it into bits or anything like that. But some will sit on the surface and swallow the prey, but some can just do it in the air, like while they're flying away. And some species will, dive to collect the fish, but for example, petrels will tend to kind of like dance on the surface of the water and pick out the prey that way. So they're not always all submerged, in the water. But I do believe most of them will pop out before finishing it up.
This is a weird niche story on my part, but puffins, when you see a puffin, if you look up puffins as a picture, they quite often have a bunch of fish hanging out their mouth. And when I was a boy, I don't know why, I always saw that as the picture. I never saw them with just their bill. I literally thought they had like tendrils that were hanging from it, because I guess the head was inside. It was always the fish tails. And it was like, I think I was honestly like 23 before I first saw a puffin picture where it was just the beak, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's what they actually look like. So there's a little sense of seabird eating that in photography, at least worldwide. So Jenni, this has been so much fun. Time flies when you're having fun. So we are nearing the end of the broadcast. Is there a last message that you'd like to leave us with about your work, about Maui, about seabirds, anything to leave us with before we say farewell?
I guess, there's so much opportunity. Like what I have learned, what the seabirds have taught me mostly, I think, is just that, you get surprises about the natural world all the time. So, we're faced every day, we see, all the cars and the buildings, and we see the people everywhere, and we kind of forget that, the natural system can still be there right under our feet, and it doesn't take much. We go to these beach parks and we remove some weeds and we plant a few native species, and then we come back next year and you can see it growing and spreading, and then the following year the seabirds will be there just to follow along. And I think a lot of people think it's really difficult, and it's just like a very, all these challenges are too much for us to overcome, but just a little bit every day, and that's really goes a long way. And I think the seabirds have really shown that that's worthwhile. They showed me that. So
What a beautiful
don't
message.
give up.
I think, again, so many people in your position have this, and this is sort of the essence of the Wild Hope series. So I'd encourage our audience to wildhope.tv. Again, it's a little unwieldy, but I did share it in the YouTube chat, so you can see Jenni's whole presentation on Wild Hope there. And we've got an amazing other program with the Oriane Society and Gopher Tortoises April 10th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So lots to explore and discover if you're keen on incredible people like Jenni and their passion for wildlife that is just so palpable. So thank you so much for joining us. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks. And I want to say, if you share the website for us, and if anybody goes on the website and has more questions, the email address that's on the website goes right to me. So please send me any more questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Amazing. So there you go. And sometimes we get a lot of extra questions and they inundate your inbox. So if you have like a little cry later with like 5,000 questions, I apologize in advance. But there you go, folks. Check it out, MauiNewSeabirds.org. So much to explore. And for now, Jenni, we'll say a big thank you and farewell. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And bye for now. Thank you, Colin.